Live from New York on a beautiful Monday evening. My name is Nathan Harvey. So glad you could join me today on this beautiful Monday evening. Like I said, my name's Nathan Harvey. We got a great show. My dad won't be joining us. He's on vacation right now. I took off this past Friday for this episode. I took off this actually entire weekend. Now it's my dad's turn to take a little bit of a vacation. He well deserves it. So he's off for this episode of the Harvey Hour. But don't worry, he will be back hopefully on Friday. But we got a big show planned. We got a couple breaking news stories that I'm going to get into. And also we have an unshocking, really not shocking to me at least, maybe to some of you out there, storyline. And we also have some Celtics news. So we'll break it all down right now for you. Let's get into our first topic. We got some breaking news. As probably expected, Draymond Green has declined his nearly $30 million player option for the 2023-2024 NBA season with the Golden State Warriors. And this is honestly not very surprising. If any of you thought that Draymond Green, after what he's been saying recently, and apparently the reported amount he mentioned on, apparently according to this website, July 27th of 2022, a 5-year extension worth $164.2 million, and he was only going to make 30 next year, none of you should be surprised. Hell, I'm not even surprised. What I'm actually surprised about is that Draymond Green thinks he can get more money with another team. I personally don't think so, because what Draymond Green does is very Warriors specific. He's not an offensive guy. He hasn't been an offensive guy in many, many years. What he really is a great defender. But is he a great team player? He did just punch out one of his young teammates. Who knows? But Draymond Green is not a good shooter, so offensively, he's actually a liability. It's his defense and his offensive catalyst where he pushes the ball up and down the court, sets screens for Steph Curry, that make him very valuable to the Warriors. That play style to input Draymond Green and have him do the same thing with someone that's not Clay or Draymond, or Clay or Steph, it ain't really going to work. There's not another team that will put in the same amount of value, take it out of Draymond as the Warriors would, with Steve Kerr, with Steph, with Clay. It works beautifully. Outside of the Warriors, what other team is doing what the Warriors do and have the same amount of skill set and the same amount of players who have that skill set as the Warriors do? Or have even the same coaching that the Warriors do? Steve Kerr right now is a top 3 coach in the NBA. I think that is pretty undisputable. He has a great game plan always. This is Steph's team. Steph mentioned recently he wants to play at least one more season with the big 3 of Steph, Clay, and Draymond, the OGs of the Warriors. However, it looks like Draymond Green may be 1 foot out the door just because he wants a little bit of money. Now, will this work? Well, it depends. Because the Warriors have spent a tremendous amount of money on players like Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins. Andrew Wiggins was dealing with a serious issue about midway through the year. I believe it started February, and he wasn't back until the start of the playoffs. And Jordan Poole was pretty bad this year, and especially in the playoffs, he completely disappeared. So, are you going to move off Jordan Poole? Reportedly, there's a lot of calls for Jordan Poole. Whether the Warriors pick up, I think they should. We should expect Jordan Poole to be in a different jersey by the start of opening night. But I will say this. I don't think Draymond Green could actually leave the Warriors. I think they're going to get it done. Draymond Green already said he wants to retire as a Warrior, so I do not expect him to leave the Warriors anytime soon. Because what he does is a perfect situation for what the Warriors need. They need some guy to push up the offense, get Curry, get Clay in their positions, set screens for Curry so Curry can make the 3 off the screen. It works beautifully. It is a harmonious relationship that outside of the Warriors, Draymond Green's value, I don't see it. And I could be wrong, but I really don't think so. And if we're talking about teams that need defense, the Dallas Mavericks, they need defense. Would it work with Luka? Or even if they bring back Kyrie? No, it wouldn't work like that.
1 sec.
Because what the Warriors do is very, very unique. The Warriors play a very, very high IQ offense that honestly most players can't handle. Look at James Wiseman, a young player. He didn't really work, so they got rid of him, and he actually performed pretty well. Now, Jordan Poole, it looked like he was supposed to be the third splash brother, the guy to fill in when Curry or Clay retires or leaves. He didn't really turn out that great this year. Now, he was pretty good when Curry left, but as soon as Curry came back from being hurt, and especially in the playoffs, he crumbled. Could we see him be moved? I still think there's value, so you could trade him. Draymond Green, though, asking for let me bring up the number again. $164.2 million over 5 years, in my mind, is pushing it a little bit. But that's me. I do fully expect the Warriors to figure out something, some long-term deal. I don't expect him to get the full $164.2 million, but I expect him to get maybe 130, 140, maybe over 5 years. Because honestly, Draymond Green does one thing and one thing great, and that's defense. Outside of that, he's pretty good to terrible, especially shooting-wise. Offensively, he could really only set screens and push the ball up the court. He's not an elite passer. He's not nowhere near an elite shooter. He's just okay on offense. Defense, that's where he shines. Outside of that, he's not really all that great. We see multiple times where Draymond Green shoots the three and everyone expects it to miss. Because guess what? 70% of the time, it does miss. So, Draymond Green declining his $27.5 million player option, I don't think is the brightest, because that puts a lot of things into jeopardy. And it's very, very funny and strange all together that the GM of the Warriors, Bob Myers, decided to step away and allow someone new to come in to then fill in that GM spot, probably because you're going to have to deal with the Clay situation of whether, to keep him, to trade him, a Draymond Green situation who would have most likely declined his player option, which he did today, and Curry wanting to bring them all back, but your best option may be to get size and move off some of those players. So Bob Myers didn't do it, and lo and behold, we don't know about Clay's situation. He could still get traded, and Draymond Green just declined his player option today. A lot of work needs to be done. We have moves like the one I'm about to talk about next, which is the Suns. They just decided to, let's get a new guy to replace Chris Paul. Let's get off Chris Paul. And lo and behold, look, they're making moves. The Lakers could be making moves. Portland could be making moves. The Warriors are falling behind a little bit. Are you going to keep your guys, or are you going to let them go? My mind, personally, Draymond Green is a valuable asset to the Warriors. Outside of the Warriors, I don't see the value. Personally, for me, I don't see the value. If the Warriors let him go, if they say, we'll let you go, either with a sign-in trade or another team picks him up in free agency, and he performs well, fine on, fair. I was wrong. However, Draymond Green, we know, isn't a great offensive guy. And the Warriors need size. To let him go might not be a terrible thing. However, he is a very, very crucial part to your team. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, they're all going to get together, figure out what to do with the Draymond Green situation. I expect him to be back on a 5-year, $140 million deal, but we will see. Let's talk about that other deal I was talking about about 2 minutes ago, probably less, which is Bradley Beal is now on the Phoenix Suns. This was a pretty big trade, a blockbuster trade. The internet went crazy. Chris Paul on the Wizards, however, he's going to be rerouted. It looks like the Lakers and Clippers, 2 LA teams, could be involved. I'll talk about that a little bit later in the topic. But the Wizards decided to get off Bradley Beal. In response, this is what the trade basically is. It's Bradley Beal, Jordan Goodman, and Isaiah Todd to the Suns for Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, multiple second-round picks, and a first-round pick swap. Pretty good trade. For who, though? Who would you say won this trade? Me, personally, I think the Suns won this trade. Because think about what Chris Paul has become. I uploaded a YouTube short recently about it. I believe today I even did it a couple minutes before the show. I said basically Chris Paul is a 38-year-old point guard who can still distribute very well, but younger Chris Paul actually had a great mid-range shot and wasn't as injury-prone as he is now. Chris Paul in the playoffs, you don't really see him. If you do, he generally does not make it that far, and God forbid he makes the finals, his team has no chance of winning it. Go see the Bucks-Suns final. Chris Paul, point guard, he has very, very bad shooting nights. Very poor shooting nights. But can he still distribute along with the best of them? 100%. But I want to talk about the Suns before I jump into Chris Paul. So now I believe, personally from my perspective, now the Phoenix Suns probably are close to being a top team in the NBA. Obviously, because this is how it should work, the Denver Nuggets should still be number one. They just won the championship. The Heat, however, I don't think you can give two. Now, they did make the finals, but it was a crazy run and got absolutely demolished in the finals. I think right now, with Bradley Beal, KD, and Devin Booker, you probably have a top 3 team in the NBA right now. However, there's a big asterisk on the Suns, which we might have seen actually last year. They didn't really solve their problem that we saw in the playoffs. Because even with Chris Paul out there against the Nuggets still demolished them. They just swept the floor with them. It was embarrassing. It wasn't until Chris Paul and KD combined for 70 plus in game 3 and 4 that they had an opportunity of winning those games. The problem with the Suns, and I was watching Colin Cowherd earlier talk about this, and I couldn't disagree more. He mentioned that this is a great idea. Because who talks about the bench? Well, Mr. Cowherd, a lot of people out there, the Phoenix Suns in that series had no bench. They had no one outside of KD and Devin Booker. DeAndre Ayton was definitely a shell of himself. He was arguing with the head coach last year, Monty Williams. Somehow he stays on the team, and now he's gone, basically. It just in that playoff series, it's like he wasn't even there. So the problems still exist with the Suns. I don't think DeAndre Ayton is going to come back and be a top center in the league or near the top of the league at the center position. I just don't believe that, because where have we seen it happen so far? So DeAndre Ayton, he could be 1 foot out the door. Will Frank Vogel, I believe there's who are the Suns' new head coaches, will he sort of reinvigorate DeAndre Ayton and be like, let's go, we got this? I don't think so. So the problem is your bench is still pretty bad. So what happens, right? You're still top heavy. You haven't solved your problem that you found in the playoffs. Because think about what role players and bench players did for the Denver Nuggets. I think the bench is very, very important. Now, it's not the star of your team, but if you have guys like Bruce Brown, who in Game 4, along with Aaron Gordon, won them that game, not only Bruce Brown, but Christian Braun putting in 110% effort. He had very, very valuable minutes throughout those NBA Finals games. Jeff Green had solid minutes. Your bench actually matters, because when your stars dip, when Nikola Jokic or Jamal Murray get in foul trouble or turnover issues or can't score or hit a shot, it's your bench players and your other starters who aren't as good as your superstar players. They need to step up. And in the Nuggets case, Bruce Brown, Jeff Green, Christian Braun, they all stepped up. Aaron Gordon had a phenomenal game in Game 4. I believe he dropped 27, and Bruce Brown dropped 25. But your bench players actually matter. So while, if we're talking about the top of the league, your top players, if we're going top players versus top players throughout the league, I believe the Phoenix Suns are up there. Because you have KD, who right now probably is a top 10 NBA player currently. I think that's hands down. You could argue top 5 probably. You have Devin Booker, who is probably a top 20 player, at least top 15. And Bradley Beal, who is a very, very talented player. I think there are about 20 other guys better than Bradley Beal. I don't have a list in front of me, but off the top of my head, I could probably name 20 or 21 names. I won't bore you with it, though. I'll make a list probably sometime later. However, Bradley Beal is still a great player, and his value was actually undermined because he was playing for the Washington Wizards, a team who has been terrible for years. They tried to make the John Wall thing work with Bradley Beal. It didn't. Bradley Beal was kind of just alone on an island with the Wizards. I'm happy they finally got off of him, respect him a little bit, say, hey, you were great for us. Now you could actually go compete for a title, because the Wizards weren't even close to competing for a title. So the Suns, once again, if we're talking about top players in the league, top groups of the league, yes, the Suns are up there. But the Suns still haven't fixed the problem they found in the playoffs. They have no one to slow down Jokic. They have no one to slow down any big men. Because guess what? Your big men are terrible. DeAndre Ayton isn't even really a center. He's a very, very soft player, and he was basically gone throughout that Nuggets series. So your problems still exist. Can Bradley Beal and KD and Booker, if they stay healthy, can they carry you through a playoff series? They'll have to, because your bench players aren't there. And guess what? You don't have a distributor. So we'll see just how great the Suns be. But if they're healthy, I think they'll still be a playoff team regardless. But when it comes down to it, if you play a team that can one-for-one match or closely match your star players, it's your role players and bench players that need to step up. And in the Suns-Nuggets series, we saw that the Phoenix Suns did not have the utility, did not have the prowess of their bench to compete against the Nuggets. So, your problem still exists. And so, guess what? You're probably going to be in the same boat next year as you were this past year. We will see. Now, about Chris Paul. So, Chris Paul has been linked to two teams. Two teams have reportedly come out and said that they're interested in signing the future Hall of Fame guard. And that's the Los Angeles Lakers and the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, Chris Paul is friends with LeBron James, and the Clippers, I think, need him more. Because think about it. Russell Westbrook was your distributor for the Clippers. They tried to have Paul George do it. They tried to have Kawhi do it. You never really had a true point guard for the Los Angeles Clippers. Chris Paul gives you that. And I brought this up recently, and I'm going to say it again. Probably now the two best options are the Clippers and the Boston Celtics. Those are the two teams that make the most sense for Chris Paul because they both need distributors. They both have two great players who could score and play pretty good defense. Chris Paul would be joining other Kawhi Leonard and Paul George for a Clippers reunion, which that'll be interesting. That's a good storyline. That's a good headline. And he could also be joining Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, who we know what they are. Now, Jaylen Brown has a turnover issue, and he can't dribble or handle with his left hand. You've all seen the clips on Twitter, I'm sure. And Jason Tatum has his off moments. But the Clippers are not without any, scares at all. Kawhi Leonard doesn't play. He's hurt all the time. Paul George, he's been dealing with some injuries. But both teams, when healthy, I think they're some of the best teams and some of the best options for Chris Paul. To me, personally, I think the Celtics make the most sense. They are probably the closest to an NBA championship, even amongst the three of them, the Lakers, Clippers, or the Celtics. The Clippers are probably number two, and the Lakers, AD, we don't know his situation or how healthy he could stay. LeBron is dealing with some injuries, and they also have Austin Reeves, who I don't know. I think Austin Reeves actually earned himself a starting spot. I don't think a lot of people have thought that and agree with me on that, but that's just what I think. So for me, Chris Paul teaming up with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, for me, makes the most sense. Both teams need a distributor, and for the past 2 years, that's what the Celtics have looked for. A distributor. Marcus Smart is not a distributor. They need someone who can get the ball out of Jason Tatum's hands, bringing the ball up the court, get it out of Jaylen Brown's hands, because guess what? He ain't got no hands, and give it to someone who could set up, have Jason Tatum be the spot-up shooter that he's really good at being, have Jaylen Brown dish to him and hope he could drive and not lose the ball, and let Marcus Smart play really good defense and at times hit a clutch three. That's what the Celtics should do. Or you can go to the Clippers with a Kawhi Leonard, who when he's healthy has his moments, but recently hasn't been healthy really at all, and Paul George, who is dealing with an injury, and when he does play, is a very good player. Who would you rather go to? For me, it would be the Celtics, because that makes the most sense to me. It does look like he will be rerouted. I think the Wizards are not going to retain Chris Paul. They're going to respect him and say, you know what, go compete for a contender. We're not really going to, give you that opportunity. So, for me, Chris Paul of the Celtics makes the most sense. I've talked about it before. The Clippers are interesting, and the Lakers, I don't think you want to team up with a buddy in the NBA. That really doesn't work. Look at the Nets. With KD and Kyrie, LeBron left D Wade, Kyrie left LeBron. Teaming up with a buddy doesn't really work in the NBA. So, I would say team up with the best team that gives you an opportunity to win a championship, and I would say that is the Boston Celtics. Out of the teams that have publicly, or not, the Celtics haven't, but out of the teams that I think fit the best and have the most likely chance at signing you, that would probably be the Boston Celtics. Or, the Clippers are interesting. Like I said, they need you. The Lakers, I don't think you should join the Lakers personally, but we will see. All right, coming up, it looks like the QB competition between Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi is concluding, and the Celtics are reportedly planning on extending Jaylen Brown with the $295 million Supermax extension. Is this a good idea? I break all that down right after this.
You have a lot to say. Maybe you've thought, I should start a podcast. Meet Anchor, the easiest way to make a podcast ever. It's a powerful mobile app and web tool that lets you record a podcast anywhere and distribute it everywhere. It's great whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out. And it's 100% free. You can record your show straight into Anchor on your phone, iPad, or the web, using any mic you want. Record alone or with friends or co-hosts anywhere in the world. You can add background music and transitions, and your listeners can send you voice messages that you can incorporate right into your next episode. If you want to produce your show using another app, you can upload your own audio directly from web or mobile, and still take advantage of Anchor's totally free podcast hosting. Once your podcast is ready to publish, Anchor can automatically distribute it to every major podcast platform. That includes Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify, so your listeners can hear your show wherever they want. And on the web, you can see detailed analytics about how people are listening. Plus, you'll get a great-looking profile page where anyone can listen to your podcast or subscribe to it. And if you want to ask your audience to support your work, Anchor makes it easy to collect monthly payments from the people who love your podcast and want to see it grow. You really don't need a recording studio, expensive equipment, or a bunch of technical knowledge to deal with a podcast feed. Just get started and join the diverse community of podcasters already on Anchor. We can't wait to hear your podcast.
Introducing video podcasts on Spotify.
Transform your storytelling into a show everyone can watch
Or listen to.
Easily upload your video through Anchor, Spotify's free podcast creation tool.
So whether you're showing off a new recipe,
Interviewing an exclusive guest,
or uncovering the next mystery,
you can now reach a whole new audience with Spotify.
podcasting just became more than audio.
Create with Anchor, watch on Spotify.
Welcome back to the Harvey Hour. My name's Nathan Harvey. My dad is not joining us for today's episode of the Harvey Hour, but he will be back in the next episode. I promise you that. But let's get into our next topic because this is pretty interesting, I would say, to some people. I'm sorry to all the Bailey Zappi fans, but it turns out Mac Jones is still the guy for the Patriots. It made no sense that Bailey Zappi would be the guy, but some of you still believed after Mac had his temper tantrum, and Bailey Zappi did have his moments, but basically, he didn't just throw away any games, so that's why I'm sure some of you were like, oh my god, this guy's interesting, this guy's cool, he could be the next Patriots quarterback. It didn't really make any sense. Did he look good? Yeah. Did he look like a starting quarterback? Not really. Was it because the Patriots offense got simplified and, Mac Jones is dealing with 10 plays of the offense? Probably. But it turns out, according to Mass Live, I'll bring up the quote here. So, MassLive.com on the latest on the QB competition said, there never appeared to be a true quarterback competition this spring. Jones took the majority of the quarterback reps in every drill. He was constantly ahead of backup Bailey Zappi. Jones also earned more reps and clearly looked like the best quarterback this spring. Anyone shocked at all? When Mac Jones, in his rookie year, had competent coaching, a competent offensive coordinator, he was a above average quarterback. I believe he was ranked number 15th. He had some higher stats than Tom Brady, Matt Stafford, and Patrick Mahomes. You've heard me say this before. So is anyone shocked? Then you go into next year. I've been through this so many times, but some people still don't understand. You go into next year where the offense was in pieces. The players knew that they was getting screwed around. You had Joe Judge, a special teams coach and a failure as a head coach, and Matt Patricia, who got hated by the players when he was on the Lions, and a mainly defensive guy, an entirely defensive guy. He was your offensive play caller and your quarterback coach? To me, that made no sense, and we saw it in training camp. We saw reports about how the offense was stagnant, would have been sacks because you can't actually sack the quarterback in training camp. Slow offense, stopped at the line, running game's terrible, passing game's terrible. And all of a sudden, people are surprised Mac Jones had a terrible year. I wasn't. I was a little bit hopeful that a miracle could happen, but that just wasn't the case. We look at all like the OTA stats and everything on 11 on 11 and 7 on 7s. Mac Jones has been nearly perfect. You know why? He has a competent coach. That's what makes the most sense. Now people say, oh yeah, it's the coach's playbook. Guess what? If a coach screws you over, yeah, you're probably going to play pretty poorly unless you're a one of one, unless you're a top 3 player like a Patrick Mahomes, like a Tom Brady, who could deal with potentially poor coaching, although Brady never had poor coaching. You could deal with some pieces being screwed up on your offense and still getting through it. But if you're a second-year player in the NFL, which is much harder than college, and you're set up to fail, and you're in one of the slowest offenses in the NFL, and you have a defensive guy who drew up reportedly 10 passing plays for the entire season, yeah, that makes a lot of sense how you would fail. Now you have a competent coach in Bill O'Brien. The offense looks great. Mac Jones reportedly is being called a leader, and people are excited to play with him. And now DeAndre Hopkins might get there? It just seems like this is perfect. This makes the most sense. Bailey Zappi was never going to be the Patriots' starting quarterback. Was he efficient in the time he played? Yeah. But Matt Castle was too back in 2008 when Brady got hurt. It was still Brady's team. Now, Brady obviously had won multiple Super Bowls, but it's sort of the same case where he said, okay, our quarterback played really well when he had a competent team. Now we bring him in. He gets screwed over. He gets actually hurt as well. You bring in Bailey Zappi. He performs well. And then Mac Jones comes in and looks terrible because his offense is terrible. He was set up to fail. The players were always behind him. The coach has had a little bit of an issue because he was whining about how bad the play calling was. I completely agree with that. Because if no one is going to take accountability for how bad the offense was, someone's got to. Bill Belichick wasn't, Matt Patricia wasn't, Joe Judge wasn't. It had to have been Mac Jones. And the players behind closed doors, and there have been reports saying that the players knew that they were getting screwed over and they had Mac Jones's back. Kendrick Bourne has come out and said the offense didn't look great and the offense was terrible. I believe David Andrews even said that the offense wasn't great. It was set up to fail. So no one should be surprised. Bailey Zappi, it didn't really make any sense. Did I enjoy watching him play pretty well? Yeah, I did. It was very, very enjoyable. He completed 70% of his throws, had nearly 800 yards in 4 games, 5 touchdowns, 3 picks. It was fun to watch. But the truth of the matter is Mac Jones is the better quarterback. You just can't set him up to fail. And when you set him up to fail and he's hurt, you decrease the complexity of the offense for Bailey Zappi, so the offense is super simplistic. Because that's what it was. The play calling between Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi was very, very different. Bailey Zappi was playing more so on on Mac Jones' rookie year playbook, and Mac Jones was supposed to be on this Matt Patricia playbook. It made no sense. So I'm not surprised in the least. Mac Jones is the Patriots QB1 most likely. He's tearing it up in OTAs and minicamp. So we should probably see Mac Jones starting there week 1. I'm not surprised in the least. None of you should be. And if you are, yeah, we just got to look at the situation Mac Jones was in. He looks great. It's really unfortunate now that the AFC East is arguably the toughest division in football now. Because every team in the AFC East was adding pieces, adding weapons, and Bill Belichick was adding weapons just on the defensive side. Now, we could add D-Hop, and I think for a Patriots team that doesn't have a superstar quarterback, I think D-Hop gives you about a win to a win and a half. He may give you a half win on a great team, but because the Patriots need a true wide receiver 1, in a game maybe against the Saints or against the Commanders or against the Giants or the Colts, he may be able to just take over the game and he'll give you that win. Because the Patriots don't have speed. They don't really have size. They don't have a lot of talent. Truthfully, they're slow. They're not a great wide receiving team. I don't have the draft picks in front of me, but Belichick has been horrible at drafting wide receivers since about 2010. So for a decade and more, Bill Belichick really hasn't hit on a wide receiver. Now, to get D-Hop, could be interesting. Tyquan Thornton is supposed to have a great year next year. We will see, because guess what? The offensive line still could be shaky. It still could be shaky. And if you even get D-Hop, can Mac Jones at least throw it to him or hold in the pocket, let D-Hop get open down deep, throw it to him, hopefully probably hit him, because I think Mac Jones actually has a pretty good deep ball. And can that hold up? Can the offensive line hold up for that amount of time? I'm not sure. But Mac Jones, clear QB1. I'm not surprised in the least. Let's get to our next topic and our final topic of today's episode of the Harvey Hour. We're flying through each of these topics. So the Celtics reportedly today, a report came out about 10 minutes before the show, said that they're planning on extending Jaylen Brown and not trading him to another team. And the extension would be $295 million over 5 years. So basically, that is the Supermax. Because Jaylen Brown did make All-NBA, he was eligible for a Supermax extension. So the question is this a good or bad idea to retain Jaylen Brown? For me, personally, it's a great idea. Great idea. Now, while Jaylen Brown, I still think, holds a lot of value to traders, the Celtics need him desperately. He's not a superstar defender, but he is a pretty good defender. His left hand is useless. He had 8 turnovers in Game 7. But what he does for the team is something the Celtics need. He brings energy. He brings consistency, which is something they don't have. Jaylen Brown is probably the most consistent player on the Celtics. Now, in the playoffs, he was consistently poor, but at least it still was technically consistency. But over the course of the season, he was consistently very good. LeBron was a just better version of Jaylen Brown in the playoffs. Yeah, I think he averaged 24 and 10. Jaylen Brown averages about 24 and 5 and 6. So what he does for the Celtics is crucial, and especially when Jason Tatum has another one of his off games, generally it's Jaylen Brown who could step it up and try to get the offense outside of Jason Tatum going. Whether it's passing it out to Al Horford so he could hopefully make a 3, kicking out to Marcus Smart or Malcolm Brogdon, or whether it's driving to the hoop. Jaylen Brown is pretty much the most consistent player on the Celtics. So retaining him, I'm not surprised in the least. The Celtics probably could have gotten a lot for Jaylen Brown, whether it be a couple first-round picks, multiple second rounds and pick swaps and everything like that, or a star to superstar player. I think it doesn't matter because guess what? The Celtics have been very, very close to winning the NBA Finals since Marcus Smart got there. Marcus Smart was a year before Jason Tatum, I believe, who was a year before Jaylen Brown. Since Marcus Smart got to the Celtics back in, I think, 2014, for the 2014-2015 season, the Celtics have never missed the playoffs, which is incredibly shocking because they've had some weird teams. Kyrie Irving went there. They had Kemba Walker there at one point. They had some strange teams. But once you had Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart all together, this team was very good. The past 2 seasons, well, actually the past season, that's where they kind of screwed themselves over with the amount of expectations they thought they had, or at least what they were given, because they just made the NBA Finals. They went to 6 with the Warriors, fell apart since Game 3, and they were never the same after Steph Curry exploded. But this season, they were basically on paper, I think, better than the Bucks, so they were probably the number 1 team in the NBA, talent-wise. Did they play it? No. Because a new ideology of Joe Mazzulla to take away from the defense and instead focus on the 3-ball was maybe a little bit conflicting for the Celtics players who just had a phenomenal defensive season last year and now needed to focus more on the 3-ball, which maybe they aren't exactly equipped to do. They have a decent amount of 3-point shooters, but the consistency isn't always there. Derek White may have been your most consistent 3-point shooter outside of obviously the 2 big stars in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. However, Jason Tatum is not consistent. That was my big knock. That's why I can't put him as a superstar. Jason Tatum cannot be a superstar in my book because he is not consistently at the superstar level. He's not. He has too many peaks and valleys. Now, if he stayed, I'm not saying he averages 30 and 10, but if he could average 26, 27, and 8, which he can do, but consistently, then I would say, okay, this guy's a superstar. But when you have 35, then 16, and then in one game against the Sixers, you shoot what? 1 of 11, 1 of 12? You can't do that. To be a superstar, you can't do that. But the law firm, the J&J law firm, it's a great duo. I mean, this duo is breaking records. So the Celtics are very, very smart in retaining Jaylen Brown, keeping him with Jason Tatum. Now, Jason Tatum also is eligible for a Supermax extension, and combined, these guys, the law firm, are probably going to make nearly, $613 million just for these 2 players? So the opportunity to bring in another star or another really good impact player, maybe like a Draymond Green or maybe like a Chris Paul, may be a little bit difficult. So it's either a player needs to take a pay cut and ensure them a championship, which, with the way he played last year, a super underwhelming season, you may not get to. However, the team that the Celtics have just need to be tweaked a little bit. Get a distributor, maybe it doesn't need to be a Chris Paul, although Chris Paul would help this team greatly. Get a consistent shooter, maybe move off of Derek White, trade him for a couple good pieces. Just options. You may need to trade Marcus Smart because I think you have great defense even outside of Marcus Smart. Now, Marcus Smart did win Defensive Player of the Year, but outside of Marcus Smart, I think you got plenty of defense. Now, I saw something on Twitter today. It was from some sort of Celtics account that I think is pretty reliable. There was a quote saying that, Robert Williams ain't that great, especially in the post, because he hasn't learned the post move. Now, offensively, really, Robert Williams' game is layups and dunks. He doesn't really have a jump shot. That could be something, because if Al Horford once again shoots 0 for 7, 0 for 8 from 3, which he has done, you're leaving up to Robert Williams to stay around the rim. So you may need another big guy who could shoot, or just hope Al Horford is more consistent. Take a little bit of a risk that way. So what I'm thinking, the Celtics team is going to stay basically the same. The starting lineup may change. I may put Malcolm Brogdon in the starting lineup. Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Al Horford or Robert Williams. I don't really care. Depending on what you need. Do you need more offense? Do you need more defense? But they don't need to get in their own heads with their egos and think, we're the best team. We could sweep through any team. They did that with the Hawks. Guess what? The Hawks actually sort of embarrassed you. You did that against the Sixers. The Sixers almost beat you. You're lucky the Sixers fell apart in Game 6, and Game 7 they weren't ready to play. And guess what? Against the Heat, you were down 3-0. And then in Game 7, you thought you had them on the ropes, and you swung, you missed, and got knocked out in Game 7. So you gotta check your ego at the door, and that's on Joe Mazzulla to make sure everyone's egos are in check. And as a team, you have to go in saying what the Heat did. We're going to get whooped. Let's just make sure we don't get beaten that badly. Or come out and say, these guys could easily beat us. Or at the home, we're not great on the home, but we're going to actually take you on. We're going to go 1-for-1 against you, which the Heat did. The Heat always felt like they were backed into a corner, and that's what made them great. Now, the Nuggets were the smarter, more dynamic, the deeper team, the more consistent team amongst them, and that's why they won in 5. But the Heat just wanted it more for the first 3 series. They wanted it more against the Bucks. Julius Randle agrees with this. They wanted it more against the Knicks. And in the Celtics series, they wanted it more than the Celtics did. Because the Celtics thought that they would breeze through the playoffs. They didn't. They got embarrassed. They almost made history. And in Game 7, an elimination game where you just came back from 3-0, 0-3 to tie it up at 3-3 in the series, you fell flat on your face. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, pretty good 3 on the Celtics team. This team should make the playoffs. They should be a top seed in the Eastern Conference next year. Do I expect them to be in the number 2 seed? I'm not sure. Do I expect them to regress a little bit? I do, because I think the cash that they're spending may actually hinder their ability to get players that they may need. Maybe another defensive player, maybe a consistent three-point shooter, maybe a distributor, stuff like that. Jaylen Brown staying on the Celtics most likely. So it's interesting to think about. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. That will be the end of today's episode of the Harvey Hour. It's a very quick show. We got, half an hour in? Speedy. We're speedy with this. We move along nicely. I'll be back Wednesday, most likely. You'll probably see it. I post the live stream before it's up, so you guys could join in and wait before the live stream goes live. If you see that, I'll be live Wednesday. I'll probably be live Wednesday. But for this episode of the Harvey Hour, this is it. My name's Nathan Harvey. I have been your host for today's episode of the Harvey Hour. My dad will be back probably on Friday. We'll be back here 6:30 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. However, Wednesday, I will be here 3 p.m. With a brand new Harvey Hour fired up. So make sure you guys tune into that. But this one, like I said, my name's Nathan Harvey. This is the Harvey Hour. Shout out to my grandpa, #1 fan out there. I appreciate you watching all the time. But this one, I'm out. I'll see you guys on Wednesday, 3 p.m. right here on YouTube.
Introducing video podcasts on Spotify.
Transform your storytelling into a show everyone can watch
Or listen to.
Easily upload your video through Anchor, Spotify's free podcast creation tool.
So whether you're showing off a new recipe
Interviewing an exclusive guest,
or uncovering the next mystery,
you can now reach a whole new audience with Spotify.
podcasting just became more than audio.
Create with Anchor, watch on Spotify.